I like spending money, which may come to you as a surprise since this is a personal finance channel, and normally we talk about things like budgeting, saving money, and investing. But today we're gonna change things up a little bit and talk about some areas that I think it's good to spend a little bit more money on, or areas that it might not pay off to be super frugal. Because while I'm absolutely an advocate for responsible financial management, I definitely think there are some scenarios where it's possible to be too frugal and actually cause harm to your financial life or your personal life. I also think that you should hit that subscribe button so that you can stay up to date on all of my latest videos. We're also trying to get to 400 subscribers, so I would really appreciate it. Thanks. But before we jump into the first area of spending, I would just like to add, if you're naturally a spender, it would be really easy for you to watch this video and use it as justification to keep blowing through your money. So I just wanted to add that anything that you actually end up buying should be something that you're budgeting for and should be something that you can actually afford, and not at the expense of things like getting out of debt, saving, and investing. But that being said, let's get to the first area, which is travel. I personally love to travel. I feel like it's something that has actually changed my perspective on the world. It's allowed me to appreciate current events that are going on right now, and it's had a great impact on my life. Getting out of your normal bubble and going out to actually see the world for yourself will give you a perspective and will teach you something that you just cannot learn in a classroom. After college, in the gap between my graduation and the start date for my first full-time job, my wife and I packed our bags and went to Asia for like 5 weeks, which isn't that long, but it felt like we were there for months. There were some struggles, there were some awesome moments, we saw some really cool things, met some awesome people, and at the time that trip was very expensive for us. Even though we planned it as cheaply as possible, I think we ended up spending somewhere in the ballpark of $5,000, which in my opinion is reasonable for 5 weeks, but we were just getting out of college and we did not have a lot to our names yet. But I knew I probably would not have a lot of opportunities in my life where I would be able to just drop everything and travel for over a month. While we're on that topic, I do think it's a good thing to travel while you're young, because as you age, you only get more responsibilities and it only gets harder. Work and family commitments might make it hard for you to actually take that time for yourself later on. And that doesn't mean you'll never get to travel again. You'll still have opportunities later in life. But all I'm saying is that you should take advantage of this time right now while you're young and there's not a lot of people relying on you yet. Now, that being said, if you're in a tough situation where you're getting out of debt and trying to land on your feet financially, this advice might not be for you yet. You'll get to there at some point, but you shouldn't do this at the expense of your future. But in my opinion, it's okay to add travel as a budget line and do that while you're young. And just because you're traveling doesn't mean you need to go and ball out and stay at the Ritz-Carlton. You'll have a lot of time in your life to experience some of those luxuries later on. When you're young and you're just trying to experience a new place and a new culture, look for ways that you can travel on a budget, while of course making sure that you're still safe. If I'm going somewhere new and I'm trying to save money, I'll usually book a value hotel chain that I'm familiar with. So something like a Holiday Inn, because the odds are that there will be some standard of cleanliness and safety. Now, you definitely need to do your research beforehand because that might not always be the case, but typically these big brands are a pretty safe bet when it comes to consistency, so you can at least know what to expect. But also keep in mind, traveling on a budget doesn't mean that you shouldn't enjoy yourself. There's no point in going somewhere if you're just gonna end up sitting in your hotel room and not spend any money. So you need to make sure you're going out on excursions, going out to try the food, maybe taking a cooking class, and actually just doing fun things and experiencing the culture. But that's enough on travel. It's just something I love to do. It's something I spend a good amount of money on, and I have no regrets on any of those purchases. And if you don't want to have any regrets either, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Again, we're trying to get to 400 subscribers, so I would really appreciate it. Thanks so much. And along the same lines as travel, if I were to spend money treating myself to something, I would typically rather buy an experience instead of buying a physical consumer good. And while that may be a personal preference, it appears that the experts would actually agree with me. According to a study done by the University of Texas, people are generally much happier when they spend their money on experiences rather than just buying consumer goods. And it's not only the University of Texas, I've seen a ton of studies to support and back this up. And I've definitely seen that apply in my own life. When I look back over the past few years, I can remember a lot of the times that I went out and did something fun with my wife or with my family or with my friends. And those are great memories for me that I cherish. But I can't think of that many things that I went to the mall and purchased that have brought me that same level of happiness. In fact, whenever I spend a lot of money on a consumer item, I usually end up regretting it and it brings the opposite. So to each their own, but if your goal is to get the most happiness out of your money, consider shifting some of your spending habits to be more experience focused. All right, not to contradict myself, but I do think there are times when it might make sense to spend a little more money on some consumer goods. And for me, clothing is one of these things. And I'm not necessarily referring to buying more volume or quantity. I'm instead saying that I like to buy more quality items. And that brings us to the topic of fast fashion. If you're not familiar, a fast fashion store is one that offers high volumes of clothing that rotate in and out very quickly depending on what the season is. And typically these clothes are made out of a cheaper material to increase margin and to cater to a more budget conscious audience. Some of these brands include H&M, Old Navy, Zara, plus many others. And on the surface, this seems like something that I would love. And in the past, I actually used to shop at these kinds of stores a lot. But in my experience, these clothes are just not great. I feel like I can only ever get a few uses out of them before they just start to wear out and just kind of tear apart. And to me, it's just not worth it. I haven't actually crunched the numbers for myself, but I feel like I actually end up spending more money at these stores because I just have to keep going back and replacing the clothes I already bought. So I've actually kind of sworn off shopping at stores like this. And instead, I'll typically go for brands that might cost a little more, but offer a great product. For example, I love Lululemon, and I'm not being paid to say that, although I wish I was. And I'm not being dramatic when I say that buying their pants has changed my life. First of all, they look great. They are super comfortable. They look professional, so I can wear them to a workplace setting, and they last so long. I bought 5 pairs of them about 5 years ago, and they are all still in use today. And typically they're sold for around $30, which is definitely on the more expensive end. At least I think so. But I literally have not had to buy pants for 2 years. So even though I spent a little more upfront, I've saved a lot of money in the long run just by buying something that lasts a long time. So just something to think about. Now, one fast fashion brand that I have found that has decent quality is Uniqlo. If you're not familiar, Uniqlo is a Japanese-based company, but their presence is slowly expanding across the world, and they're starting to get stores here in the US. Again, not a sponsorship, but if you're looking for clothes on the cheap, I have found that that's a pretty good place to get them, and they actually do last for a decent amount of time. But that's enough on clothes. All right, for this next area, let me first share a story. When I started my first full-time job, I was going into the office pretty regularly, and I had 2 options when it came to my commute. I could take the toll road where my commute was only 15 minutes, or I could take the free roads, but my commute would increase to 45 minutes each way during rush hour. And the toll road was about $4 round trip. So essentially, by spending an extra hour in the car every day, I could save $4. Now, does that sound like it's a good value for my time? In my opinion, it's not. I value my time pretty much more than I value anything. After all, it's the most finite resource that we as humans have. So I have no issue spending that $4 to get an hour of my time back every day. I don't know if you guys have ever watched the show Extreme Couponers, where people spend hours optimizing their coupon strategy and go to the grocery store and pretty much get all of their groceries for free, which sounds awesome, but when you break it down and you consider the hours that they're spending on this, it's pretty much a full-time job. If you look at the value they're getting per hour of work, it really only comes out to like a few bucks an hour. And to me, that's not worth it. You would be much better served spending your time doing something else. Now, that example with the Extreme Couponers is extreme, literally. But I see a lot of people fall into the trap of just trying to save money no matter what, without actually analyzing if doing that action is worth their time. Now, if you're early on in wealth building, or if you're in a scenario where you're trying to get out of debt, then yeah, maybe you should be taking that longer commute to save some money. But to me, part of frugality is being an optimizer. And sometimes it makes sense to spend a little so that you can get more value out of the limited time that you have every day. To work on this, try assigning a dollar value to an hour of your time. You might do that by just calculating how much you make every hour. But part of that value can also be how you cherish your time. Just because you value your time doesn't mean you always need to be making money. But once you have that value assigned to your hour, you can compare it to the time required to save a certain amount of money and determine for yourself if it's truly worth it or not. All right, the last area where I think it makes sense to spend a little more money is with anything related to your health. And I get it, especially for those of you that are here in the US. Going to the doctor is not cheap, but the problem is if you put it off, it's only going to get worse and more more expensive over time. Since I've graduated from college, I make sure to get an annual physical, I make sure to get my blood work done, and I also make sure to go to the dentist twice a year, which is super important. And it relieves a lot of anxiety on my end to just take care of things as they come up instead of putting them off and letting them linger. And to me, spending money on your health is one of the best investments that you can make, because what's the point of working hard and building wealth if you're not actually able to enjoy any of that? And this also includes things like gym memberships and eating healthy foods. And there's ways to do both of those in a cost-efficient way, but don't cut them out with the goal of saving money, because you will end up paying for it eventually. But anyway, that's going to do it for this video. Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments. Do you agree with what I shared in this video? Are there any areas that you think it might make sense to spend the money and not be as frugal? Again, make sure you hit that subscribe button, make sure you hit the like button, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.